Grandmother Helen, welcome. Thanks so much for being here today. And everybody who's listening or manages to find this, thank you for being here. There are so many important ways we can spend our time, and it's a deep honor for you, Helen, and everybody who's listening to spend a little time to be part of this conversation. So we're going to dive right in, and I thought, and I apologize, our audio might be a little worse than normal. We have a little echo going, but we're going to do the best we can today. So I apologize if the audio is not quite where it should be. We'll work on it. Okay, so Grandmother Helen, let's have people kind of get a sense of who you are by just dropping into one of many of the diverse parts of your story. But I would love to hear from you a little bit more about your village and what happened with the companies that were threatening that, and how that impacted you and your people. And yeah, I'd love to just kind of dive in there, and then we'll see where it takes us.
First of all, Jordan, I want to say thank you for inviting me for this sharing and dialogue. So, in our culture, I am called the Noid, the one who knows beyond the words, a healer. And the world globally, I am named as a grandmother Helen. So I come from a very gifted family since many generations back, gifted family of the original structure of our land. And that has been flowing in our ancestry, in our DNA. And it took me a long time in life to realize that I was gifted, and that what I had could not find in books, which I think we all have. That's the knowing beyond the knowing. That is the original structure in every human being. I grew up in a little village, Likavara, outside Gällivare. I grew up with the mining, seeing it from the day I came to life. It was already there from 61. And it was kind of two separate worlds to have it on the other side of the road. But I grew up in a very, very loving home with the grandmother that was the soul of the village, where we was the center of the village, and it was, but it was also hard because I grew up in a diverse home with both Swedish, Sámi, and Finnish people, and all the effect of the collective trauma that was stored in the land, in the humanity, in different ways. And so I became the silent child in my family until I was 15, and I wanted to see the world. So I left North when I was 15 years old with a promise to myself I will never return, because it was so much inside of me that was so painful. And I didn't know, I didn't have a voice, because the silence is its own language up in the part of the North. It speaks much more than the words, and it's also much more scary sometimes than the words. That is the journey of life. And so you get very skilled of feeling that. But I always been a very caring person. So I educated myself in all healthcare that you can take on. I ended my career in psychiatry, in special care of trauma and psychosis. But I ended it by myself because I felt I have 4 children to raise up, and to look into the young persons from 13 years old became too hard to have 4 sons to raise for me. So instead I became kind of a lawyer in between the people who came in between the system to be their voice. So my voice, it has grown during my life. Today I have no problem to speak, but to go back to about my village was that during the exploitations of the mining of that Boliden mining was doing, the mining for copper and gold. My father worked there he was the second person who was hired there. He was one of the project management in that mining. But in a way that he was a constructor, and in a way that was very hard for him to see, and also with the hope that they will never come near us. About 20 years, they started test drilling in the village, and then we knew it was a fact. It was just the time and when. And then they started to buy land. People who died in the village, they bought land, they bid on the land, and the houses became very, very expensive. But the mining bought everyone. And during the last 8-10 years, they step by step negotiate with people in the village of buying the land, because they find a string of gold and copper that will last for 10 years. About 10 years they can have profit from that land. And in a way you don't want to believe that, so you continue to live. And I came back also to my roots, to find myself and to open the door to my knowledge. And you really are thinking that security is a word. We talk about security for the world, for the earth, for the water. For me, security is a very fear language, because it was always the mining company to secure, to take out the most resources they could, as fast as they could, so no one else come and take them. So the movement went very fast. And during 2020, it was clear that if we don't sell, there will be a legal affair about it, and we will not maybe get payment for the land. And my father, he went into the last of not selling, and trying to negotiate with them on what will happen if we stay. And I also offered them to take over the house and stay. And then they come with different letters of illegal stuff. But during the end of 21, the official was that now it's going to happen. They started to mark all the houses, the trees with numbers. And in 2022, we knew that now it's going to happen. So my father called me in May 2022, and he said the 25th of May they put down our house and took the land, and then they step by step, now the village are not existing. It's going to be an open mining for copper and gold, and they have it's totally closed. They are not really there because there are some environment laws about protected animals, but they are playing with this legal structure, with these documents. But what happened with the family was that when I always have had an imagination of how do you feel if you look at Amazonians when they losing the rainforest, or how do you feel when you lose your land? But you cannot describe that with words, because it is a connection beyond everything, because you lose your roots. And we can never go back there. I can never show this land for my grandchildren. I can never connect them to that. I can tell stories about that, but I can never come back. And what happened, it became a lot of health issues in my family. My father, me, and my aunts, and both mentally and physic health issues. So it's kind of very hard. And how do you come back after that? How do you find hope in life? How do you find even, a spark or a joyful way to continue to walk? And in September 2022, I went up to the north to my cabin, and then I met one of the oldest women who lived there. She said that, Helen, you cannot allow you're dying from the inside because now you have closed the source of life. You have to live. You have to find ways to share about this, but also talking about the importance. Why are humanity so confused? Why are they running around? And how many hasn't lost their land? How many hasn't lost their roots? And that is the deepest connection we have. And now I really can feel it in my whole system, in my whole body, and also many in my family. So it's been quite a journey in so many layers. But also, I think today for me is so important to how do you find ways? How can you weave this awareness in what they are doing with the land and plant these seeds that are needed in the world we are living today, because it's needed to create some awareness and plant seeds to have a realization. Because people who do this, I don't see them as enemies. I see them as lost souls that maybe comes from another world totally different than mine, never have the connection. Maybe, and I think that's very important to be not judgable. I think it's because I think that's the way we are, disappearing. We are just, fading out if we go in that. So for me, it's kind of, that's why I go globally and talk about this.
You mentioned that that grandmother Helen's grandmother was at the center of the town. How do you know how long your family and residents were in that area and on that land?
Since 1600.
Since 1600.
Yeah.
I grew up. Go ahead.
Yeah, we lived the village. The first that was coming was a Sámi family. That when it started to build in 1600, and then it started people to move into the village, and we had lived in the old school that was built in the beginning of 1800, and on the land that we had, there was a stone wall that was created by all the stones that was when they were building the village and making so people could build their houses. And this is this is really protected legally wall, but they are now in the mining area. So even that they can trick and go.
Yeah, there's always a way around, just a matter
Yeah,
of time when you're dealing with the corruption.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, so you're a keeper of the Sámi tradition, and you mentioned that first Sámi family that came to start that village in 1600. Tell us a little bit about the Sámi tradition and the Sámi people. And
the Sámi, as a lineage of the Sámi tradition, we are the people, the indigenous people, or could say that are in Europe. We are nomadic people, and for life for us is that there are no separation between the outside world with the nature. I'm not talking about infrastructure and houses, but nature is a mirror of who we are. So as the land are feeling, that's how we're feeling. So we have a very deep connection, and also living with the nature, but also living by the 8th season, where every season in between is the most important. That's the season for preparation for the other season, and always to be I mean, there were no things to measure how the weather will be or anything. You learn to know, you have your inner compass. You learn to know so you don't get lost. You learn to read the trees. You learn to look at the sky to see what will come. And for every season, you know how you are, you can predict how the winter will be. I did it with my father, and we had a diverse view this year, which is the first year, but because he saw in the trees that it will be a less winter, and I saw in the sky and felt in the earth this will be a hard winter with extreme weathers, and that we have had. So and now it's very hard to read that because everything is in movement, everything is in flux, and everything is so, how can you say, polluted in a way and in exploitation. So when you are polluting the structure of nature, you're changing also the cycle of the nature, the biological cycle. So you can see that because our year is not starting. We are starting in the year of May when the newborn baby is coming of the reindeers, and then we are following during the year their movement. And we have also I come from my mother's side, we are the forest Sámi. My father's side, we have the reindeer herders. But we also, in my grandfather of my mother's, very far away, we have also the reindeer herders. But we are a nomadic people, so the lineage have been so, crossed up there because we have other minority people. We also have the Kwan people that are living by the border between Finland and Sweden. And then we have kind of the Lantalainen, that's people kind of, how can you say, they were traveler and helping in farms and being kind of a movable of that. So, and in the Sami culture also, we traditionally we're living in the mountains on the summer with the reindeers and the movement of them, and in the winter we have the winter place. So now when my father we lost the house, he says that the apartment is his winter place. That is his way of surviving at the moment, and the cabin we have is his summer place. And to have a way of being. We also have a very the traditional healing is very rooted in the land, in being one with nature. So it's really very simple in a way. It's not complicated. It's just the simplicity that make it, and a lot is in silence. Of course, we have different. We use different. I use my hands, for example, or I use rocks, or I use just my voice, or in silence, much in silence. Then we have the people of the elders that are praying to God and following that path.
Yeah.
So there's different, but the traditional living is very in balance with nature.
Yeah.
Never do anything without asking for permission of nature.
That's such a common thread from Indigenous people I've been lucky enough to walk with around the world, from Asia to you in Europe, to North America, to the Amazon. That deep respect and always asking for permission. Even before. My friends here in North America will take a little piece of sage to smell it, or to that they'll always stop and say a little prayer, ask for permission, and it's such a different mindset.
And I think the most different is that I am as I am in my physical person, but then I have my ancestry. The ancestry are walking with me, which means that I have my grandfathers and grandmothers that are walking with me. So they come if I'm not following that to ask for permission. So many times when I travel to places, I am not allowed to speak. I am just there to be in silence because I need to introduce myself first to the land and offering to the land and introduce me to this ancestry and the spirit of the land. Because that is to have the balance of reciprocity when you meeting each other globally wherever you are. And even if you I was at a place recently that is a very it's in South Sámi area, and there have been many people from different parts of the world moved there because it's very popular. But what I felt when I was there was that there's lack of asking for permission when you're rebuilding things or building new roads or new houses. But it's not that they don't do it to harm the land. It's just they don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, there's such a different framework. You know that I spent a lot of my career using some of the largest tractors on earth to move mountains, and in an extraordinarily careless and ignorant way. I remember one time I took my daughter out to see one of the job sites, and there was a new housing development going in, and so we had dozens and dozens of the large earth-moving tractors, reshaping everything. And I remember my daughter asked me a question. She said, "Well, what happens to all the little mice and bunnies that are in the ground?" She's watching, tractor after tractor just go, and and it's. I remember the first time I was on a project where before we moved the land, we were instructed to take off all the top layers of the soil and carefully store it. And then after it was rearranged, put it back on. And it's like, okay, well, that's a little more care. And then later, walking with some of the indigenous people and seeing them ask for permission before even removing a twig, or a piece of medicine. There's such a massive gradient of care and understanding and consciousness. When I was young, I remember, I remember, smashing a spider or something, and then starting to go, wait, that doesn't feel good, right? Like, what is that? And you start to pay attention, and it's like, okay, if we have regard for life, we should be carefully letting the insects out of our house. And then later, I was maybe removing a house plant or something and threw some soil in the trash. And it's like, wait, that soil is living and alive. Like, take it out of the trash, take it outside, So, but there's such a gradient of understanding that took me so many, strange experiences to get exposed to. You talked a little bit about navigating through the wilderness, so to speak, and not getting lost, following the seasons, learning to read the trees, learning to feel and understand. And obviously in the far north there, the consequences of not paying attention and navigating properly can be deadly. Talk to me a little bit about your understanding of navigating through the journey of life and the compass, and how do we stay in touch with where we are and where we're going. And then if there's anything you'd like to share, you're communing weekly with Indigenous elders around the world. What is the understanding or the perception by Indigenous elders around the world of the compass of where we're at as a human species, and what's at stake, and why it matters?
So I will start with go back to my own story. You know, when I was 2.5 years was the first time I saw a spirit. She met me in the forest, and it was so clear. And I told my mother, and my mother was very Christian, so she said, "We don't talk about that in our home. That's nothing to care about." But that it opened the space in with me, and also with the connection with my grandfather that I lost when I was 3. So during life, I had these two realities, one with the spirit, where I felt safe with the nature, and one that was an internal conflict in me, that I didn't have any compass. I had so much fear, and I wanted away from this world. I wanted to find my way of living, and I didn't want to have anything of this, because the disconnection and not the confusion, but the internal rules of what were we allowed to talk about and what were we not allowed to talk about. That was very strong when I grew up. So instead, I also tried during all the years in between I was 37, I tried to find ways in the spiritual world, in healing, and I educated myself in psychology and finding, humanity very interesting. How do we really work? How is the world? How is the world? What is what? So 2007, I had a extreme burnout. I get a heart attack, and my whole life, I thought I had it all. I was living in the totally outside of myself in the other world. I had a work, I had a house, I had everything. Everything was so perfect, in my opinion, at that. But I was so lost. I didn't have any compass of life. I was so seeking for the compass of life. Where do I feel I belonging? Where do I feel I fit in? What is right? What is wrong? And so afraid to be on the outside. Instead, trying to adjust myself to be in the inside. How we should be in the world outside. So it happened, and during 5 years, I was in a deep depression, struggling really with myself. Who is Helen? Who is she? She has so many experiences that are so many question marks in my life. And she has so many deep connection and so many loss of them. So after 5 years, I was thinking, like, in my family, from my mother's side, it was very important to have paper on everything, because then you are someone. The titles were very important. So I was thinking, okay, we take an education. You get a diploma, you get a paper for that. This, you can talk to the spirits. That's when the turning point came, because I remember that day, because we were driving. I was with my father, and we were driving between Gällivare and Liikavaara. We was going home, and I said to him, "Oh, I have applied for a class for 1 year to be a medium, so I can really be authorized to talk to spirits." And he stopped the car and he said, "I am not going to allow that. I'm not going to allow you to do something that you have in your roots. This is not negotiable. You cannot do this." And then I said, "What can I do?" And he said, "You have to come home to your roots. You have to come back. And this is the first time I'm coming back to the north." And then coming back in a kind of integrating with the land and the spirits. So he sent me out in the forest, and he said, "Just listen." And I came home for days and days and days, and I said, "What am I going to listen to?" And he said, "Helen, you are not listening." That was the only thing. He's very calm. And I think after 2.5 weeks, I you come to a point where you give up, you surrender to it and think nothing will happen. And I remember it very well because there was a female moose in the forest that day. And I remember when I was standing and breathing and how everything changed in my vibration. I cannot really describe it with words. And I starting to crying, and I starting like to feeling my heartbeat much stronger. I get warm, I get cold. And then when I came home, and then he said, finally, now you are listening. It's to listening beyond the reality we are living. It's to listening beyond the silence, beyond the words. So then to land in that, I said to him, you have to confirm everything that I have seen during my life. So we go through that and he confirms every person, everything that happened. And then he also tells me that he is gifted. He also have this. So, and that is also an opening for me to connect back to my father that also have to left this and disconnect from this. So I starting to realize that this was out of my control. I am not the one who is controlling this. I just need to trust. I need to come back to my core. I need to trust. I need to feel where my intuition is in my body. Is it in the stomach, the head, the neck? Where is it talking to me? And I also had to realize that the body was the instrument that will be the guidance for me now. So and then the next phase come in my life, I was thinking like, okay, you educated yourself, you were really good at your work. So what can you do with that? And then it really just take me and said that, oh, it's your education. You can do whatever you want. You can weave it how you want because it's all uniqueness in you. And then I decided to really fully dedicate myself to walk. And since that day, there are no books. I ask sometimes my father to learn something, and he said, the day I need it, I will have it. So it's stored in our universal library inside of our DNA. So when I'm talking about the compass of life, is that so many times we are living a life that is controlled by the collective ancestry that has been flowing for generations, that have been fighting for the people, that have been struggling, that have been in violence, in war, in colonialism, in different parts. And that ancestry is fully alive. And sometimes we are born with so many fragments of that we really don't know, and we think that it's ourselves. So the importance when I talk about the compass in life, it is really to go back to the primordial senses and dive into that to see how do I feel that I'm connected, first of all, to my heart, to my water, to my soul, to me, to my body. So it's because that is when we are in tune with ourselves, we act from another source. And of the ancestry, the collective trauma can even come in me sometimes in dialogue, especially when it comes to the mining. Then sometimes it comes out from my mouth and I was thinking, where did that come from? And then I know it's the ancestry who is talking. So, but to find a way of navigate is that because we think that the last year has disconnected. It's century back, it's 100, 200, 300, 400 years ago we are disconnected. It's so deep, but really to feeling like, what do you need? What do you longing for in life? What do you feel inspired of? what make you curious, and really feel into the primordial senses in with you. Many people say that, oh, you are so knowledgeable because you're an Indigenous woman. And for me, I'm coming from a community, I'm coming from a tribe, I'm coming from a lineage of Sámi people. But we all have Indigenous wisdom inside of ourselves. We all have that in our lineage, in our primordial senses. So I think that is something also that everyone wants to have a belonging, to feel that they are home somewhere. But the most important is to feel the belonging in with yourself, to respect yourself, to feel that this is me, and what I'm feeling and what I'm seeing and what I'm longing for, no one else can, because we are all unique. So I think to navigate, that's why we are saying that we are living by the 8th season. We are following that cycle. So it's really not about life and death. So we can, if we look at that perspective, every morning is a new morning. Every evening we leave and we wake up to a new morning. And as you said, when you said about other tribes, we have so many similar, we are so the same in so many, and that is what's been shown now. So many prophecies are coming up to the surface now and talking about what is emerging, what is the message, and what is the ancestry telling us and showing, and how has it been since century back. Because that is the importance, not to, separation anymore, even in the spiritual realms or indigenous world, is to come together and see how can we complement each other, and how can we weave in to the today's life where it's needed with our knowledge. Because I think we can hire everything when it comes to infrastructure, it comes to corporate world, it comes to science. By integrating the ancestral knowledge, it's giving a higher quality of what we are doing.
Yeah.
Because it's needed, because that is the collective that has been there for century back.
Yeah.
And it has something to say.
Yeah. I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back to this thread in a minute, but something else is coming up that I want to dive into a little with you. You mentioned to me the other day a really interesting confluence of two different streams of background, one from the Indigenous Sámi people, and then another aspect where there was Catholic or Orthodox priests and bishops coming over, who were kind of colliding with those indigenous traditions and burning, quote, the witches. What's rising is that there's so much fear and conflict when different cultures come together. I remember a few years back going to the first Indigenous Peoples movement meeting here in North America in Texas, as the Spirit was starting to bring people together across tribes. And I remember, for the first time hearing stories from grandmothers about the religious cleansing of their cultures and their family members being, stripped of their clothes and their language and their hair and being put in cages and, kidnapped from their families and put in religious indoctrination schools by the priests and bishops, etc. And so it's really interesting how the strong Christian tradition, that's such a such a poisoned word too, because obviously those kinds of behaviors are entirely antithetical to the spirit of absolute and unconditional love that Jesus was talking about. But that religious stream collided a little bit. So tell me a little bit more about that collision of those streams in your own family history, and how have you come to think about that fear between cultures? And the last thing that's coming up is, I remember a quote from one of the I forget which one, but it was one of the famous quotes from one of the indigenous Native American chiefs as their land was being taken. And he was saying, you guys are coming through and, torturing and murdering and stealing our land in the name of God, and, banning those practices and prayers and all those things. And he said, we know something that you don't know. Our God is one, and and maybe someday, the white men will come to, find this out. So anyway, what does that bring up for you?
During the 1600s, there was a man called Lars Levi Lestadius. He came with a religion, Lestadianism. There were two, I will call, sects. I don't remember the name of the other. We had a discussion yesterday about it. So in my lineage, the Christianity was one, on my mother's side more, but Lestadianism was very, very strong. So my father is born in that kind of family, and his grandfather was the predicant of the village, but he was also the doctor and the healer. So there was these two different houses, but we never was allowed to talk about the different houses. There was nothing that was any special or anything. People come, father has told me stories, people come to the house and they were very sick and they walked out, but they were never spoken of what he did. And then on Sundays they were sitting as lights, and with a kind of strict, very, very strict. So when my father also grew up, I mean, he liked to play like the citra. He made them by himself. My grandfather, he burned them, because that colonialism, like you also talked about, that's one big part of our society, of our lineage, where we were not seen as human beings, where we were seen as animals, where we were not allowed to go in the community schools. We were not allowed to even live near communities that wasn't Sámi. So that is very stored in me, the separation. And that was also something that was very activated when the land was taken, that it's kind of being a feeling of you are not allowed to have any life because you are not a human being with any value. Yeah. And the feeling of being prisonized. And so when we are meeting, for example, so in my family was the diverse. And when we look, because when I started to walk my roots, I decided in the Sámi culture, it's very important if you can wear the traditional dress or not. You have to know your lineage. So I did the research on all 4 my lines to have the code. Really to know where I'm coming, what ancestry am I carrying. And when I was going into my grandfather from my mother's side, I find that in the 1600s, there was a bishop in Uleåborg in Finland that ended up exactly in the city where I am living in Härnösand. And he was here when they executed and burned a lot of witches, because I'm living in that. Because Härnösand was kind of the capital of the north. So everything was centered here where I'm living. And also what happened was that the church took children from the Sámi people and educated them to be framed as they wanted. And so did Laestadianismen also. Very young boys, mostly, and also young women. And still, up in the north, we have this religion, Laestadianismen. And we have it called, it's the East and the West. And it's a diverse of how, so in the hardest of them, they are not allowed to have any input from the world. No radio, no music, nothing. It's so strict because that's the devil's voice. And the same was with the drum, because they closed the joik as the devil's voice. They took the drums and burned them. Mostly every of the household had their own family drum. That was their guide. That was their compass of life. That was how they talked to the nature, to the animals, to the spirits. So it's been kind of, and I think that's when I go out and talking about that in other gatherings all over the world, I want to express that there are no difference in between where we come from. What is different is the latitude, the vegetation, where we are, if we are living in the North Pole or we're living near the South Pole, because that is the difference. But if we look at the structure, how the violence and the destruction has gone is the same. If we look at the mining, it's the same company that are in Spain or are somewhere else doing the mining. If you're looking behind, you have to look many layers behind. And like you said, like your daughter said, what do you do with the mice when you come with these big tractors, And it's really, so for me, when I come back, because I have made a movie that we are now going to put together about the loss of my land. And when I came back there, and just to feel and to help so many ancestry to come in peace and to tell them what happened, because they don't understand. That's the energetic, that's the one they've been walking there for generations, serving the land. And then this big machine comes and take everything away and really destroying the structure. The same is with deforestations. When you're taking down the forest, you can plant a new forest, but it will never be the same.
Yeah.
So this is kind of this is the different layers of it. And I think there have been so many layers among indigenous people that are similar. But the fear is also among us of not to have a belonging, the mistrust, to be suspicious. Are you coming to taking anything from us? That's why it's so important when I travel to ask for permission and to introduce myself. I'm not coming to this land to take anything. I'm coming to this land to set the prayers, to be with you, to unify with you, so we can see how can we help each other, how can we support each other. The same was also that something that really was kind of a crash with me was when I realized, oh, you need to pray to God. I cannot count how many Sundays I've been sitting in this prayer meeting, and I have felt so much that was not spoken, really like so sharp and everything. And so it was kind of a conflict. And how can I pray to God when God created that I wasn't allowed to have that world? And that bridge I had to come in peace with, to find the balance, my way of praying.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much that's coming up. It's so hard because we've so we've so poisoned, even those words that, you speak a word like spirit, or you speak a word like God, and it's like we've become totally detached from understanding the deep personal, non-propositional, unspeakable meaning of what those words are trying to point at. It's so hard. And when we're going back to try to remember that all creation is coming from the same generative source of the universe as one body, one living system that we're all part of, and we're trying to come back into the understanding that we are one family inherently and part of one living system that is breathing and sustaining us all. There's such, it's the essence of absolute and unconditional love and unity to understand that interconnection of all things and understand that truly, what we do to any ounce of soil or water, we do unto ourselves and to all creation and unto the Creator or God or whatever words you want to use. So it's going to be an amazing quest to try to heal our fear and understanding around all those deep lines of tradition and religion. And
I think one part is that is important to embrace that we are the mirror of the nature. We are the reflection of the climate. We are the reflection of the outside world. So when I look at the climate, I think, this is how humanity are feeling now. And if you really think in a week, how many times do you get a signal from your body and you are not listening? A vibration of, I feel something is wrong here. How many times do we take that away and not listening? And how many times do we have to go this wheel over and over again? And then we are sitting, how could I make this mistake? Why am I not finding the solution? Or why am I stuck here? Why am I limiting this? And then if you really just tap in to feel like, did I feel something that was resonating already that was not really aligned? Yes, I did. But that is the disconnection, is that it's not that we don't want to listen. We have lost that.
yeah.
It's to come back to that listening, to really, and to have the trust, what is emerging, what is coming from the inside of our water, our heart, our body, it is the most true.
Yeah. There's, it took me, I have heard from many grandmothers this idea of those subtle vibrations and alerts that something's off or something's not really right. One of my favorite others that maybe we'll have on soon, but says, even just that little feeling in your left elbow, letting you know that something's not quite right, and it, as a man raised in a completely different culture, it took me 10 or 15 years of martial arts experience before I kind of got back in touch with all of that energetic side and started to understand, what that means and how to use that to begin to connect and navigate. Tell me, thank you for sharing that, by the way. I really appreciate it. Those are deep and painful places to go, and I really appreciate you being willing to go there with me and share. When we think collectively a little bit about navigation and where we are, what's kind of arising as you're welcome to speak to it personally or speak to it as the kind of consensus understanding that you're feeling as you commune with Indigenous people around the world. But just tell me a little bit, for many people who listen to this that may have never had conversations, even with Indigenous people at all before. Tell me a little bit about what's arising from that community of amazing wisdom keepers around the world.
I think what we are trying to make awareness around is about the original structure that is already stored in the land, in the sky, inwoven in the tradition, in the language, in how we are living life, and also reconnecting humanity back to that source that they all have. Maybe a generation, many thousand generations back, but we have it all. And I think that what's really emerging now, what I'm really feeling is that there's an emptiness among the world, there's a confusion, and there's a scarcity of fear of what will happen next. And because we have been so attached to the outside world, because we can take on that. That's something we can take on. But the world I am, it's really beyond the words. You cannot Google it, you cannot, it's kind of coming back into yourself and find the trust within yourself, to trust your decision, to stand for them, to respect yourself, as the animals do. We have a lot to learn if we look at patterns of animals, for example, how they work in family, how the birds are flying, how the wolves are taking care of the family, how they showing love and respect, but also giving the protocols and the frame of what's right or wrong, but also being loving. And but what I see is that is really emerging is to open the dialogue, the wisdom dialogue in between the modern society and the ancestral wisdom, but also with the transparency and the peace, with the understanding that I often talk when I go and speak about it. I say to the audience, you might not understand my world, and I understand that because it's so far away. But I am here for listening and deeply listening to have an understanding where you come from. We can take water as a topic. It's not about, for me has been, because I work around water in many occasions or in many projects, and it's to map how is the relationship we have to water, and how do we want to, what is emerging when it comes to that. And because as we protect the water of the world, we are protecting our own water. Because there are no difference, there are no separation in between the water we have in our body and the water that is flowing outside, or the most important, that is the earth's blood, you can call it that, the groundwater. Yeah. Because that is the water that is connecting us all. That's where we are woven into the earth. That's the biological cycle. So for me, it's really so important to talk about this thing, about kind of when we come to the, for example, collective trauma, where is the voice we are speaking from? Is it from the ego? Is it from the heart? Is it from a logical mind? Or is it from a source within ourselves? Or is it coming from an ancestry that are so wounded and so angry, energetic? So we have this, some people ask me, why am I so angry? Why do I feel so irritated and triggered with a specific topic, for example? When we look at that, we can find maybe it's not even their own anger. Maybe it's not even their own trigger. Maybe this is a trigger that has been in generation, but never had come to peace. So it's still moving and moving and moving. That's why it's so important to be transparent, and supportive, and not judge. Because I talk to you, I don't know your story. I cannot judge you for whatever, but we can come to the point in life where we just ask ourselves, how do we want to live? I mean, we're going to have grandchildren. What do we want to leave for the coming generation, for example?
Yeah. How would we like the world to be?
Yeah. And I think that's a very pure and honest question, because I mean, I want to live on a healthy earth. Then I have to care for myself, and I have to care for her. And I also have to understand that 1,000, 2,000 years ago, they lived in one way. Today, we live in another world. And how can we integrate that world without destroying it and abusing it? Because we are living in a modern society. The technology is a fantastic thing. And that's what I'm talking about. How can we weave that? How can we find ways and different solutions so we are doing it in a way where we're doing it in diversity but very sustainable? So we are bringing in to a healthy earth instead of, and this is in all area. It's a holistic perspective. So we have to look into the wholeness of ourselves. Like we have this wholeness in with us, but we also have to look in the society, in the world. What do we want to bring into this world? And what dialogues are important to have? Some topics are not so nice to talk about because it brings emotions, but emotions creates transformations in with us human.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. I've been attempting to learn that as well. So let's talk about the process of so many times as we, especially in a culture of such deep conflict of all these competing idea sets, when we hear a different opinion or perspective or something that threatens the narrative structure that we've built up in our minds about how the world works, let's say. Oftentimes, depending on how deep our ideas are challenged and how many other ideas depend on the idea that's being challenged. So for instance, when you use a word tool like God, you're inherently invoking the deepest substructure of all being. And so it's no wonder that people, freak out and, fall apart as soon as you have different ideas. But so when we're triggered, it's easy to say, you triggered me, Helen, by saying that. It's a different thing to have something higher in me, have spirit source within me, notice that I'm triggered in my physical embodiment. Like you said, try to pay attention to where and why that's arising and what it's coming from. And then that creates this potential for surfacing and healing, and maybe even the breaking of generations long chains of trauma and suffering, that if we can expose them and heal them, we don't have to pass on to our children. Tell me a little bit about what you've learned of that process of triggering and emotion and healing.
From my own personal journey, emotions were not communicated in my family. They were existing in a constructive way. So when it was a funeral, you cried. When you hit yourself, you cried. It was very constructive and disconnected the emotions for many reasons, and that is in the ancestry. So I had a lot of triggers. I was so afraid of all the feelings you can imagine. But I closed all that until my crash 2007. So I didn't even feel my own vibration. It didn't exist. I became the perfect version of that I thought was the perfect version of Helen. To be the best mother, the best employment, do the best that I could, but never be good enough. So what is happening is that I have done this journey because I have 4 sons. I traumatized all of them because I am their mirror. And that came to me, and then I made a contract with myself that I don't want this to pass on. It ends with me because I have 2 grandchildren also. So how do you deal with it? One part that was the biggest part, it was the loss of the land, our home, our roots. There was so much pain. There was so much stored secrets. There was so much compressed energy, triggers in the land. And when I was doing the healing work there, I realized so many things that wasn't me. And I became very, very sick. I entered a space that I don't want to go back to. A very, very vivid, dark space of no string of life, but so many secrets that was kept in silence. And so many secrets that was kept in silence of survival system, because it's about the survival system when we look at trauma. So I did that, and then it started by expressing very honest to my children about who is their mother, what limitation did she has in her life, and where did I find the answer that why wasn't Helen angry? Why didn't she speak during her growth? Why was she silent? And it wasn't because I wanted to be silent, because I didn't know how to speak. I didn't know how to have a dialogue. I had a dialogue, of course, with my grandmother that I was safe with. But outside the world of my grandmother, it was very unsafe. She was my anchor in life. And also to mirror and see my sons, where are they in life? What are their relationship? What choices have they done? How are they living their life? And I saw so many mirrors of me in every one of them. And so I started by being very humble, very gentle, and expressing my feelings. And I remember when I started to cry, they became so afraid. Are you sick? What's happening to you, mother? Why are you crying? And I said, it feels like I have a river of tears coming out of me. So it's nothing you have done. It's nothing, there's no kind of anything that I can take on, but I have to let this river come out. And then we started to talking about the ancestry of what has been in our family, what has our lineage gone through. Yes, they have gone through colonialism, they have gone through different religion, but they have also gone through kind of war in between the Swedish and the Sámi and the Finnish people. So the internal war also. So, and I think that one of my son, he was in a very destructive relationship and come to a very destructive situation happening. And that was kind of really that was the end point of me, like, wow, you are really have being the mirror of the life you had and raising him. So I think that is kind of to come to see that, to acknowledge. Often I work a lot with trauma. People say, I don't want to hang out with my parents. I don't want to talk bad about my family. And I say, we are not there for judging anyone. We are there for understanding. So we look into their ancestry and we find maybe they're coming from a lineage of really war, or they're coming from a lineage like me or whatever. then you can see pattern of maybe there were, since 3 generations back, you didn't communicate about feelings. The feelings were not integrated. You live a very constructive, logical life outside. You survived. And that is a part of a healing journey, to map this, to map what is emerging, where does it come from? And so I've done that journey with all of my sons. It has been very different because they are 4 different souls. And they have learned me so much. And I can say today they are my biggest teacher. Because I have choose to break in this and giving them freedom, giving them the life and to being who they are. That means that I sometimes also can be very naked in, kind of, they say very honestly, this is not working, mother, or this is not working. Yeah. Now you're going against your grain. They really, so when I mirror them and I give them the mirror and they really landed in that, now they mirror me when I tap into different patterns, because that is also something that is happening to me, because beyond that I'm carrying this lineage. I mean, I am a human being. I'm a woman, I'm a daughter, I'm a mother, and I'm a grandmother. And I'm a friend. I have so many realities. And I always say that the beauty is to see what realities do I have around me, kind of what roles are in my life. And then is to tap in that, to weave that together. This is all me, which means also that I have a part of me that today say no without any explanations. A part of me who say yes without explanation. A part who is not compromising anymore. Yeah. But that is a journey of coming home. That is a journey of being very true to yourself and not judging for whatever decision you have taken. You took them because of where you were in life at that moment. There was a young boy from Israel who asked me, Grandmother Helen, I am so afraid I will fail. And I said, because he went to climate restoration school. And I said, don't be afraid. But he said, you have never failed because you are Grandmother Helen. And I said, I have failed 1,000 times. That's the life journey. We are learning by experience. We have to. People come and ask me, what is the path of my life? And I say, you will have many paths. It's all where you are in the present time, if you choose to go to right or to left. But as long as you're deeply listening in to what is calling inside of you, what is emerging inside of you, then you can navigate through this path of life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting how so we could say that the fidelity of that compass, let's say, that we're using to navigate is directly, how accurate that is or inaccurate is directly proportional to how deeply we're connected to. This is where every time I go to say a word, I just think of all the things it'll trigger in people's head. But we could say something like the Spirit of God or Source is present within every being and accessible to every being through the process and the deep silence. And Helen mentioned the importance of nature and connection and those weeks in silence. That's been a big part of my journey too, is trying to learn how to go out into the wilderness, alone for days, maybe without food, maybe without water for a few days, but to try to push to the brink where you're shedding enough that you can you can reconnect, so deeply. And then it's amazing the difference in how you feel as it was later in life before I learned that there is no matter really. It's our perception, and everything's energy, everything's vibrating, everything has a resonance and a vibration to it. And so very literally you can connect with the depths of the source of all that within you to guide and to try to navigate. You said something I want to come back to, from that standpoint of understanding that we are fundamentally spirit and associative energy. What is your understanding and the indigenous understanding of how those generational patterns of trauma get passed down and connected through the generations?
From the beginning of the beginning, we are the first that is connecting to us is the heart and the water. In the womb we are growing in the water, and we hear the heartbeat of our mother, and the same heartbeat Mother Earth has. So I often say that the drum has the same heartbeat. But when to look back to that is really, we have all a unique frequency. That frequency is coming from the source when we are in the womb. We are born with that frequency. Then sensibility, everyone has a unique frequency. And that frequency are created of the 9 months the mother carried the child. So it's also about when we look into how was the life in the family, how was the life together as a mother and the father, was she sick, was everything calm or not, and that you also can find kind of patterns inside of yourself. So we are looking into the 7 generations. We always say in the 7 lakes, we travel back to 7 generations, and every lake has information to give. Every lake, we're going down, down, down. And when we are tapping into the silence, it's very hard if we are living in this world with a kind of noise all the time. That is also to be very kind and humble to yourself, that you don't just turn it off. Yeah. It's really delicate to allow the sound to be and just sit with it. And as long as you're sitting and breathing, and finally it fades out more and more. And then you come to a state where it's silence. And then you come to a state where you can listen beyond. It's the same with meditation. We meditate, and then we are thinking, oh my God, I was thinking of what we're going to shop for food, what we're going to do this weekend, etc., etc. That's totally fine. But as soon as you give it attention, something bad, then you are disconnected from the meditation. But if you allow it and embrace it, that, okay, I hear you, you are there, fine. By breathing and breathing, this will fade out and it will be calm. So in the generational water, our memories are flowing since so many generations back. That is how a gift are given, for example. It's not that my grandfather taught me how to do in a practice of a book or anything. The same is health issues travel in the water. So in the water and the blood, we have different structure that contains different memories, different fragments since generations back. And that is flowing as an energetic. So I see it as I see the Earth and the global Earth as a energy body.
Yeah, exactly.
And in this energy body, these energy threads are flowing. That's why we can get, they can be, a disease, for example, a very odd disease. Someone gets sick in the family, and we're thinking, where does this come from? But if we are starting to map, we can see that it comes from a generation back. My brother has been very sick. He has been to the best of the best professors. And one day they find that he has a disease that comes so many thousand years back from South Asia, from my 23 mother's chromosome, that has been traveling in our blood, in our bones, in our water. And it is something that is genetic. It's something that can be passed on to my children or my grandchildren. And that in the same way, skills are flowing. How do we know that we have a skill to build a house, for example? Some people are born builders.
Yeah.
Some people are born speakers. It's the same. It's coming from the energetic body and has been flowing for generation. And then we have, we can look in my communities where the women were not allowed to speak. They were silent. We have many that are hesitating how to use their voice, how to speak, what to say, how to act. And then we looking in the seven lakes, we can see that, oh, in the fourth generation, this was happening. And she was in an abuse situation where they took her voice. And this has passed on.
Yeah.
Because when it's passed on, often is that we haven't acknowledged it. We just put it as a secret. We have just put it away. And that's how this kind of, in the subconscious, that we have storage of these small boxes of secrets that can come up in life, and can come up by we are in a specific place and suddenly we get, why am I feeling this is a situation I know? And then we have activated one of these boxes.
Yeah. A vision that's coming to mind right now that I often have when have in the context of healing is if you imagine a body as light, or energy, and then within that, all these little pockets of darkness or things that are stuck or blocked or whatever, so your optimally healthy flowing body would just be completely light, all those blockages cleared out, and then we end up compacting and hiding away kind of these pieces of darkness. And we don't understand that those things are causing us cancers. Like my a healer I've worked with for many years, she says, women don't realize that the trauma accumulating in their hearts and the energetic patterning of that is what's causing breast cancer, for instance, and that can be healed, that it doesn't, like, that can be healed spiritually and energetically, and so it's such an amazing thing. And so when you have the vision of healing, it's figuring out how to surface those hidden pieces of darkness, let's say, and bring them into the light where they can be cleared. And that's kind of what I was trying to communicate earlier, is it's like, it's such a gift when you, one of the principles of continuous improvement, let's say, in the Western tradition, is every defect is a gift. Because as long as the problem is buried, you don't have the opportunity to fix it. And so every time somebody finds a problem, we should be celebrating like, hooray, we found another thing that we can heal and improve. And so getting back to that idea of triggering, when especially across these diverse traditions, I mean, we've both traveled worlds to find each other. And when you start to come together, you know, you bring out in each other these very deep things. And again, you could be like, you triggered me, and so I'm going to bury that back down and flee and blame you for being a bad person. Or we can go, you know, hooray, we just found something that, you know, feels like it lives in the depths of me that's making me freak out. You know, what is that? What just happened? And how can we bring that to the light? And every time we do that, we're clearing and clearing and cleaning and cleaning. And there's a very vivid imagery of that in the Judeo-Christian tradition via the phrase, like gold refined in the fire 7 times. And so it's like you keep exposing to the fire, and the smaller and smaller bits of impurity are getting, you know, burnt out through this kind of interaction and dialogue and healing.
Yeah, it is. Trauma is really a gift. It's something that every happening that we feel are not aligned with us has something to teach us. Every meeting that is triggering us has something to teach us. We are the teacher and the student during the whole life. So every meeting we have has its meaning. And when you look at that in the way of kind of activism, for example, today, we have the activism of that is very hard, and it's very understandable of what's happening to different tribes. And then we are now trying, I think what we are now doing in many communities that I am in, trying to weaving into how can we navigate in the world we are living today. Is it the words that also has become one of our the biggest defense system? We are hiding behind the words. So that's kind of because we have learned how to constructively use words and not feel. So what we are now looking into, how can we find what is emerging, but how can we find other ways to weave in, to create this awareness, to opening this space that is needed to be healing. But also what I feel is really important that I think we don't maybe bring up, we have started with that, is that even among the indigenous, my sisters and brothers, we also have our collective traumas. So when we come to lands, when I come to lands that has a very kind of tribes that are very suspicious, for example, they have been through very hard times. That's why the introduction of me is so important. That I come in peace. I don't come to take anything. I come to meet and to learn and to see and to hear and deeply listening and see how we can weave together. And that is with the respect. And I think that we can have respect, again, so many things in life. I see it among many, I meet it often. But when we're starting about, they can say like, okay, I will do like you want me to do. And I say, I don't want you to do what I am saying to you. I want you to feel, and I want you to respect yourself. Because sometimes when they come for a quest for me, they can say, because I'm a seer, so I can see already when they come into the struggle in their mind that, okay, I want to leave, now it's enough. But then I say to them, don't stay for me. I am an instrument. I am a tool for you. I'm in service for you. So that show your self-respect, and that's the dialogue you have to have with yourself. Am I respecting myself? Am I really caring for myself? And I haven't been the best person in the world that I can sign under, because I've been so much in service and just moving and not taking care of myself until I am in a bad accident in August and broke my ankle bone. So in 2 weeks, I will do the third operation. I had a month of infections, but that has learned me this time that it is so important to ground yourself and to see and to take care of yourself and be the best of yourself, because then your appearance, when you go out and you speak, even if you are silent, you are sending out another vibration.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the same when we go into these different, we can say, conference or different realms in the modern society world. It's so important to align yourself and just go as transparent as possible. And because every feeling, every emotion you have, if you're coming in from the defense system or you have a bad day or whatever, it will be felt in the room, because it's something that is coming beyond the words.
Yeah. You mentioned breaking your ankle, and you reached out to me recently on behalf of the Kiva family. Let's share the story of what happened. So why don't you share a little bit about what the Kiva family is and one of the projects that we're working on for the 2025 pilgrimage. Explain what happened to you and some of the other elders as you began to work on it. And then again, as a white male from another world, I was really interested to hear the way that you guys were kind of interpreting that series of events and why it led to you to reach out to me.
The Kiva ceremony is a ceremony that has traveled all over the world with different persons who had been aligned with Tigres Perez's vision. He had a vision during the 70s to bring the prayers of Mother Earth together and bring the 5 continents in one prayer. And I've been walking with the Kiva I was invited to Germany 3 years ago, and I wasn't aimed to go because I had some family private issues. So, but Helmut, the organizer there, he was insisting. So, and I don't like to come in when we have started the ceremony, that come in, and just stepping in to the ceremony on the 3rd day. It's never feeling good for me. But he was saying, doesn't matter, you have to come. So I went there, and it was my first experience of being in the Kiva family. And it was totally different from all of the different gatherings I've been, where it's been Indigenous people or different. It was totally so beautiful to walk as aligned for the prayer for our mother, to walk in to the deepest heart of her and set the prayer for her. And where we starting by lighting the fire, and the fire is burning through these 4 days. So, and the 2nd year, I also became sick at the Kiva. And this year, I broke the ankle bone. But the interesting part, I broke the ankle bone after, there's a video with me 5 seconds before, I'm so happy. I'm so full of life. And then 5 seconds later, I fall, and they thought I broke the hip first, but I broke the ankle bone, very long crack in the ankle bone. So I ended up in Germany for hospital. And but what we could see that was most emerging during this Kiva, also the emerging of this prayer to bring together, but also the emerging of finding peace in between all different indigenous tribes. So we're walking aligned, we're coming there for the prayer. And so I broke the ankle bone and I ended up in a wheelchair. And for the first time in my whole life, I needed to have people helping me. And this has been the hardest journey ever in my life to not to be in service and just to receiving. And it showed me also the importance of receiving. We have to have balance, the exchange. And that's very strongly in my culture, that you have the exchange. It can be the energetic exchange, it can be a hug, it can be a word, it can be material, whatever. And then, but the healing of the leg hasn't really progressed. And so I'm going to do the third operation. But what it showed and really come to me that the Kiva needs the ground. There's so many layers of other forces that are moving now in the world of different, you can see in the energy, but you can also see in in many layers. So then I did my second operation in November, and then 15 days before the Kiva in Mexico, Heriberto Velansor had a vision. He had a vision of that now is the time to bring the 5 continents. The importance of doing a pilgrimage through the 5 continents. What I also did this year, because they missed the Africa continent, so I brought in my family of brothers and sisters into the Kiva this year, where there were 3 representatives from Africa, because I'm a part of the Earthrise Collective that is based in Africa. So he had this vision that we are here for weaving the golden thread through the continents. And to start in Spain, go from Spain to India, go from India to Australia, go from Australia to Africa, and go from Africa to Chile. And when we have done this pilgrimage, we have gone a cycle, and in the middle the water is. So we are giving birth to something new.
Yeah.
And the context of doing this, the vision is to bring these 5 fires into one, and to allow the flame of these 5 fires to connect to the human heart, to opening the love and the peace in humanity, to bring in the prayer and to strengthen our mother so she can carry us. Because we have to remember, she is carrying us 24 hours a day, as the heart is. It's never sleeping. So, and then I get the knowing that Heriberto also broke his ankle bone 2 days before the Kiva. And I broke the right, he broke the left. He did an operation, I did an operation. And then Edu from the media broke his leg. And then the question comes, what is this? It isn't not a coincidence, it's a pattern. is a pattern that this is so needed, this is so emergent, and that, but we have to build it on a fundamental ground. With that means we have to build together the 5 continents. But we also have to give nurturing to every continent to build their own spirit, their own Kiva, creation of their tradition, their land, their spirits. And the importance of every Kiva is to listen to their spirit where it is.
Yeah.
So this is the Kiva Pilgrimage 2025, where we will travel between 50 to 70 people among the 5 continents and unify in prayers. It is never done before, and I already see that we are there. That's why I feel the inspiration of doing this is really so needed, and there are no time to wait for doing this. It's really to weaving the tapestry of Mother Earth together and weaving the tapestry of the fire together, connecting with the earth and the Father Sky. So it's so extremely important, this movement now, because it's a movement, it's a global movement. And it's a global movement that starts now in the spring equinox, where they're lighting the fires in every continent at the same time to be connected.
Yeah.
So, and then this will be a story. So we're going to start to share the story of this movement. So you can follow it. It's going to be online in different social medias and also YouTube, to feel like, because for us it's important that it doesn't begin when you come to the Kiva. It begins now, that you are part of something where you can feel yourself, but also a global connection, a global web of life. So this is, and of course, there will be layers of triggers. There will be layers of tension. There will be layers of situations. What is important when you're building a family is to be honest and to speak, because there's not about right or wrong. It's about giving the space, holding the sacred space, and allow everyone to talk, to have a voice, to feel and bring up to what is emerging. Because if we are not doing that, we will create an elephant in the room. And then this will grow and grow and grow, layer of layer. So I invited Jordan as my beautiful friend, I would say. We have met in different occasions, but I felt I had a dream, because I have been recruiting people to this. And I always, in my dreams, or I meditate, and you, Jordan, come so strongly to me, and some other people that I've been connecting to, that I wanted to introduce you this global movement. And so that's the journey we are on. So I invited you to the Kiva family.
It's a deep honor. It's a deep honor. There's so much about when we look at every prophetic tradition, about the time we might be in addition to our own sensing and prayers, so much is about this idea of people from every tribe and nation and language and voice, rediscovering the common wisdom and spirit and the golden threads, as you say. And so it's a deep honor to be here as a young man with a grandmother on the other side of the world. It's a great honor to be we're bringing together some of the structure and infrastructure and technology and things of one world with the deepest wisdom from elders around the other world to try to pull off something that's never been done in history, like you said. So it's really neat. It's to me, it feels like we're trying to live out the prophecies of the eagle and the condor flying together and reweaving. So it's really a deep honor.
And I
So
think,
for any, go ahead.
and what was also that is really, we want everyone, every continent, telling the story from their spirit, from the footprints of the animals, from the footprints of the land, from, so it is so we can weave it in, because through stories we grow, and through stories we can feel into, but we can also see, we will see that when we're looking into the different continents, we will see how they are weaving really into one thread.
Yeah.
And that is the beauty.
Let's talk a little bit about the characteristics of that golden thread. We use so many different languages, like we were talking about for the deepest things, so many different ways to express our relationship to the Creator and all creation, to Spirit, to God, to our values, to principles, to wisdom. And then, despite that vast diversity, we can see the golden thread through the deepest messages and wisdom of all tribes and nations around the earth. So let's talk about some of the characteristics of that golden thread. Like you used words like love, and you used words like family, and you used words like unity. What are some of the values or the principles that seem to you to be most universally resonant that we can unite around, even as we're coming from dozens of different tribes?
First of all, it's love. It's the self-love. It's the love to
Yeah.
everything living being. It's life, and life is sacred. So the love, the frequency of feeling. Love is such a big word, but it stretches so far, but it's having the belonging to feeling that you are connected to something. And you can say the connection is God or the spirit or the human beings or the land, but it's to have feeling that you are not alone. And even if you are feeling, even if you are alone, you never are alone, because there are so many layers of having a belonging. And another part is peace. How can we find unconditional peace? How can we find the transparency in peace? And now, as I said before, we are living in a world that is emerging by a lot of words. But if we, for one moment, limited the words a little bit and look into what is really peace and how do we feel peace within us? Because it starts with us. And then the reflection of peace within us goes to the outside world, wherever we are in the world. And another part is integrity, to have the integrity, but also the reciprocity in diversity, that we all are unique, the uniqueness of a human being, that this is kind of so that's something that, and also what is also you can see as a common thread through all these prophecies is the prophecies of the animals. You mentioned the eagle and the condor. In my world is the reindeer, the white reindeer, the white owl, the white wolf, for example, for me, that I'm working with. And the connection of how these all species, all living entities are a source of information. It's a source of intelligence. Like water has its own intelligence, you know, its own structure, its own voice, its own connection. So it's to tap into that source. And another part is respect in a way of responsibility. What responsibility do I care? And what responsibility can I demand to other people to take? Do I have the right to demand anyone about responsibility? But if I take the responsibility, then I will be an authentic mirror for the outside world. I had a woman, she working in one of the science institute in Sweden. She said to me like this, I was creating a conference, and she said that, I want to ask you something. And I said, yes, you're welcome. And she said, I am in service for Gaia. And I said, beautiful. But I'm working for this institute. Yes. Mm-hmm. And she said, there's been a struggle, you see, grandmother, in between me, that I am working in this blockage institute, this closed box. And in another hand, I am serving Gaia. And then I said, I asked her, do you feel that you are on the wrong place? No, I feel that I'm on the right place. Because if I wouldn't be inside of these walls, I will never create a new vibration. I will never make a difference. With my awareness of Gaia, I can plant seeds inside of this box.
Yeah.
And that's one part. But also, we're talking about the prophecia. We're talking about what is the common thing. It is to connect to nature. And the connection to nature is the connection to yourself, because you are the nature. So there are no separation. So when you reconnect to the source within you, then you're feeling a higher vibration with the nature. Then you can also resonate with the nature in another way. And then you can also, in this energetic body, because it's kind of me, I can see it as a physic thing, these different strings of energy that's moving from the south to the north and crossing each other through generations and connecting and disconnecting and again crashing in connection and different parts. So it is really to see that the knowing of, to look into all these different prophecies all over the world. And you can see it taps a lot into 7 generations. The number 7 is a magical number when you look at different traditions or different tribes. And then also one part is that to really also embrace the essence of existence of all life. And then I'm not only talking about humans. I'm talking of everything that is existing as a living, and everything is alive. Everything has a vibration. From the smallest to the biggest, even a little seed has its own vibration. So it's kind of tapping into the essence of life. But it all begins with ourselves. And I think that's why it's so important to talk about and guide people. How do I find this? I maybe never, since generation, we were never connected. How can I find it? I maybe follow my industrial family. I maybe follow my financial family. I maybe take a lot of they have taken a lot of decisions, and even I take a lot of decisions. Like, for example, I worked in psychiatry care. I mean, I served the medicine companies, if you look at that.
Yeah.
And if I really reflect on it, I can see how that is destroying. And but what is happening is that it's catching us, it traps us. So we get, even if not doing anything, we are trapped into a pattern that society are expecting of us.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to look into what is the layers of these original structures. And this is what now this is weaving together now with the eagle and the condor, with the in the Earth Rights Collective, and in the Wisdom Keeper delegation I am, and in the Kiva. So everything is emerging now and weaving and having dialogues, because these dialogues is very important to have. So, because the only thing the collective ancestry wants is to know that we are here and standing our ground and can walk. But as long as we are not here, they are not trusting us. So they are coming and having the voice. They are making us sick. So I hold a very big event many years ago, and we lighted a sacred fire. There were from different nations there. And I saw Grandfather Fire get tired, but there were so many conflicts. There were so many traumas. There were so many triggers in this event. And then I called one of my sisters and I said, Grandfather Fire, he wants to sleep. And then she said, and she was above the Arctic Circle, and she said, yeah. And then she asked, what do you want to do? And I said, it's not about what I want to do. I need to listen to him. So I took the decision from our culture, from our perspective, I took the decision to let him sleep overnight. And when we had emerged what's needed to be emerged, then the fire will light them again. So this is, it maybe become confusion, but it's really so important that as we have the nature in ourselves, we have also the elements that living, the climate. So it's like when we're sending our children to school and we know that something maybe not right, but they are not saying anything. And then after maybe a year or 2 years, it comes up to the surface that has been maybe structural abuse or whatever. But if one of my sons went through it, if I have listened from the beginning, it never had went so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that and I can be, it's not about being hard against myself, but it's just to take, what did that situation learned me? It learned me that the listening is one of the deepest and the most profound and most important thing, is to really acknowledge listening inside of yourself. And if something, like you say, an elbow is talking or a finger is talking, just rethink again, okay? What is this? Just ask you that question. Something is triggering. It just takes a few seconds to reflect on it. And the more you reflect on it, the more connected you be to your source.
That's a beautiful It's a beautiful ending word. Is there anything else that is arising that you would like to communicate before we wrap up our time together?
No, what I want to say is that don't forget that you all are unique, and don't forget that life is a universal library. We do a lot of mistakes, we succeed. The path is bumpy sometimes. But if we go in the regret, if we go in the bitterness, if we go in the anger or the hate, we get sick. It destroys us from inside. But also feel into sometimes where is the voice coming when you feel like uncomfortable? What space within you are you speaking from? And allow yourself to spend a little bit in silence every day. And if there's 1,000 thoughts of have to or passing by like an autobahn, let it be like an autobahn. It will be calmer after time.
If we all could spend some time in silence and prayer together every day, and then take responsibility for the healing and regeneration of our lives and our world, all things would become possible.
Yeah. I believe that. I believe that there's always a way back home. Back home to source.
I want to share, maybe in closing, a vision I had since you brought up finding the way back home. Earlier this week, as we're turning the corner and trying to take responsibility for how we heal and regenerate and restore and reunite and reweave humanity back into the family that we're intended to be and the living system that we're a part of. I had a vision of the world mired in chaos and darkness, and but we were all holding candles, and a few of us found each other and were able to light our candles aflame. And all of a sudden, there was just a little pocket of light starting to dispel some of the darkness. And then the realization was every one of 10 billion people on Earth, has the potential within them to be fully alight and aflame and in love with each other and with creation and with God. And we could just simply pass the flame and light up the darkness and walk each other home. There's nothing stopping us. There's no permission required. It's the simple act of love to reach out in love to our neighbor and just see how we can inspire, how we can spark curiosity, how we can spark responsibility, how we can begin to connect and care for one another. And it was really interesting because when I looked at some of the indigenous traditions around the world and in some of our longer term planning, we've been talking about how we reach and connect and do our best to help enlighten and empower one another, at least 3% of the population by 2026, 250 million people, let's say. And so I started just running the math on how it works to just pass the candle, pass the flame. And so I just thought, okay, well, what if we cared about this enough that each of us was willing to try to find one other person to pass the flame to each week? Not the biggest ask in the world. And you realize that within, 30 or 40 weeks, you mathematically would sweep all 10 billion people on Earth with an invitation, of light and love and unity and peace and harmony and coherence, justice, truth, wisdom, all the values that we can reunite around beyond all the lies and deceit and division and darkness that's currently separating us. So Yeah, Helen and I have traveled worlds to find one another, and networks of hundreds of Western and Indigenous and Eastern and Southern and Northern people from dozens and hundreds of tribes around the world. And we are committing to try to reunite and walk together and help one another and see what we can do to heal and regenerate our world. And so we would love to invite you to join us and be a part of more of these conversations and be inspired, be curious. If we all just take a little responsibility and connect with one another and find somebody to pass the flame to, the world can soon be a different place, imaginably better, and however we want it to be. So.
I would like to say that I always end with a question. I love to give questions as a present to people. And the question today is that if you close your eyes, you put your hand on your heart, and you feel into, when you're breathing, into the question of what are you longing for? And there are no answers required. This is a gift to yourself to feel into what are you really longing for. It can be a deep longing since from the beginning of the beginning. It can be a longing of something that happened during the week. Just feel into that question and give yourself that, and embrace whatever comes in you.
Thank you for that beautiful gift and for the gift of being you. And thank you for being a part of my life and my family. And it's an honor to be part of yours.
Yeah, I also would like to say thank you to you for being you and for that our roads has been crossed, that we met each other, and like I said, everything is happening for a reason, and the weaving among so many layers is so important. It's emerging really. It's not to wait. It is every step we take and every second that is important. It's the moment, and the moment is now. So thank you, Jordan, for inviting me, and thank you for having this conversation and share and having this dialogue with me.
Thank you so much. Helene just updated her website recently. So if you would like to connect with her or find out anything more, you can look up Helene Lindmark online. It's helenelindmark.com, I believe, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, perfect. And then if you'd like to join our growing movement to try to take responsibility and meet this moment in history, feel free also to visit jordannicholas.org and click Join the Movement. And that'll connect you to us, and we'll look forward to walking each other home.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's always a joy and an honor to share. And thank you so much for the gift of your story. And thank you for the depths that you went to today and shared with me. I'm deeply grateful. It's an honor.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.